Ambassador Elena Ken steps off her shuttle onto the gleaming floor of Nexus Station, her heart pounding beneath her perfectly pressed uniform. The massive space station hangs at the gravitational center of 7 star systems, its architecture an impossible blend of technologies from 200 spacefaring civilizations. Elena catches her reflection in a polished wall, the determined face of humanity's newest, and perhaps last, chance at being taken seriously. Ambassador Chen, welcome to Nexus. I am Turval, your liaison, announces a slender blue-skinned being with 4 arms and eyes that shimmer like opals. The Council awaits your credentials at the 15th bell. Please follow me to your quarters. Elena nods, gripping her diplomatic case tighter as she follows Turval through corridors that seem to stretch into infinity. A towering insectoid being clicks past her without acknowledgement, followed by a floating crystalline entity that doesn't bother to adjust its path, forcing Elena to sidestep quickly. Is it always this busy? Elena asks, noting how other species move around her as if she were merely an inconvenience. Turval's mouth parts in what might be a smile. Nexus hosts representatives from over 200 worlds. Ambassador, you'll grow accustomed to the traffic. Humans are still something of a curiosity here. A curiosity or a joke? Elena asks, keeping her tone light despite the weight behind her words. The liaison pauses, multifaceted eyes blinking in sequence. Perhaps both. You are only the 3rd human ambassador in the decade since first contact. The previous 2 lasted less than a standard cycle each. Elena had studied their files extensively. Ambassador Rivera resigned after a mental breakdown. Ambassador Okafor requested reassignment after being consistently excluded from crucial meetings. Neither made meaningful progress in elevating Earth's standing. They arrive at her quarters, modest by Nexus standards, but larger than her apartment back in Singapore. The viewport offers a stunning vista of swirling nebula and distant stars. Your orientation begins in 2 hours, Turval informs her. I recommend rest. Council sessions are demanding. After the liaison departs, Elena unpacks her meager belongings. Among them, a small holographic projector that she activates with a touch. The image of Earth, beautiful and blue, hovers above her palm. 10 years since first contact, and humanity still struggles to find its place among the stars. 10 years of being patted on the head like precocious children. Later, during her orientation, Elena witnesses the ancient Merskani delegates casually veto a resource proposal that would have saved a struggling colony world, simply because the petitioners were too young to understand resource management. The Merskani, resembling massive feathered serpents with 6 eyes, don't even look at the representatives of the affected world as they slither away. Why did nobody challenge their decision? Elena asks her guide, a reptilian being named Savik. Savik's scales shift from green to a cautious yellow. New species speak when spoken to. Ambassador, Earth has been spacefaring for what? A decade. Some races here were building Dyson spheres when your kind was discovering fire. That doesn't make them right, Elena replies, noting how several nearby delegates turn to stare at her audacity. Perhaps not, Savik concedes with a flick of his tail. But it makes them powerful. The Council operates on precedent and tradition. Your species hasn't earned the right to question either. Elena watches the proceedings with growing unease. The casual dismissal of younger species, the political maneuvering, the barely concealed contempt for newcomers. This is what she's up against. Not just alien biology and culture, but thousands of years of entrenched hierarchy. She straightens her shoulders. Earth didn't send her because she would fit in. They sent her because she wouldn't give up. Take me to the archives, she tells Savik. If I'm going to represent humanity, I need to understand what we're walking into. Savik's scales ripple with surprise. The archives. Most ambassadors start with the diplomatic reception lounges. Elena smiles thinly. Not most ambassadors. 3 weeks into her posting, Elena receives her first opportunity to address the Cultural Exchange Forum. a supposedly informal gathering where species share insights about their worlds. In reality, it's a thinly veiled status competition, where ancient civilizations boast of their achievements, while younger species listen in reverent silence. Elena enters the forum chamber, a vast amphitheater with seating arranged in concentric rings. Representatives from the oldest civilizations occupy the innermost circle, with progressively younger species relegated to outer rings. Earth's assigned seat is in the second-to-last row, between a silicon-based hive mind discovered only 30 years ago and a gaseous collective intelligence still struggling with the concept of physical boundaries. Ambassador Chen announces the forum moderator, a willowy being with translucent skin through which complex patterns of light pulse rhythmically. Earth is recognized for its cultural presentation. You have 15 minutes. Elena activates her prepared holographic display. Distinguished representatives, I thank you for this opportunity to share humanity's unique developmental path. She guides them through Earth's diverse biomes, art, music, and scientific achievements, carefully selected to demonstrate human ingenuity despite technological limitations. The reception is politely disinterested until she reaches the section on human adaptation. Perhaps most distinctive about Earth's history is how warfare drove our technological and social evolution. Elena explains, displaying a timeline of human military innovations alongside their civilian applications. Our need to overcome existential threats repeatedly transformed our society. A rumbling sound interrupts her. It takes Elena a moment to recognize it as laughter, starting with the Vraxian delegation and spreading throughout the chamber. The massive Vraxian High Commander Zorak, his scared exoskeleton gleaming under ceremonial armor worn by his lineage for 10,000 years, rises to his full 4-meter height. The human believes her planet's tribal squabbles qualify as warfare. He announces to renewed laughter. The chamber's holographic systems activate at his command, displaying Earth's most advanced vessels alongside Vraxian war fleets, so vast they dim stars. Your species' entire military history is but a footnote, a child playing with sticks before discovering fire. Zorak continues, his mandibles clicking in amusement. The Vraxian Imperium was conducting interstellar campaigns while your ancestors were discovering agriculture. Elena holds her ground, though her cheeks burn with humiliation. Commander, with respect, I believe humanity's diverse conflict resolution strategies might offer. Resolution strategies, interrupts a Joxan representative, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns indicating amusement. Your recorded history shows humans fighting the same wars repeatedly over identical resources and territories. What exactly have you resolved? The Galactic Council members exchange amused glances as Elena stands rigid, her knuckles white, but her expression carefully neutral. What hurts most isn't the mockery but seeing representatives from other newcomer species joining in, desperate to align themselves with the powerful by stepping on those below. Perhaps the human would benefit from education rather than a speaking slot, suggests an ancient Murskani diplomat, their feathered scales rippling with condescension. I move that Earth's representative be assigned to the historical archives for remedial study of actual galactic conflicts. The forum moderator's skin pulses with patterns that Elena's translator identifies as apologetic. Motion noted. Ambassador Chen, your time has concluded. We thank Earth for its contribution. As Elena returns to her seat, whispers and chuckles follow her. The silicon hive mind beside her shifts its crystalline structure away slightly, as if embarrassment might be contagious. Don't take it personally, murmurs Savik, who waits for her at the chamber exit. Everyone gets the treatment their first time. Is that supposed to be comforting? Elena asks, maintaining her diplomat's smile despite the anger simmering beneath. No, Savik admits, scales shifting to a thoughtful blue. But perhaps illuminating. You now understand what you're up against. Elena watches as the forum moves on, the Vraxian commander now engaged in animated conversation with other ancient species representatives, occasionally glancing in her direction with what her translator interprets as smug satisfaction. "I understand perfectly," she replies, a plan already forming in her mind. "They think human history makes us weak. They're about to learn how wrong they are." The historical archives of Nexus Station occupy an entire sector, a labyrinthine complex of data crystals, holographic repositories, and even physical texts preserved in temporal stasis fields. Alina spends 3 sleepless cycles exploring its vast contents, her eyes red-rimmed as she consumes military histories spanning back 50,000 years. "Ambassador, you've been here for 26 standard hours," notes Kermox, the archive's caretaker, a species evolved from what might once have been similar to Earth's octopi, with 12 manipulator tentacles and a translucent dome housing a pulsing brain. Even for humans, this exceeds recommended cognitive activity periods. Alina rubs her temples, then takes another sip of the bitter stimulant beverage the station synthesizes as a poor substitute for coffee. "I appreciate your concern, Kermox, but I need to understand galactic warfare history before the next council session. Understanding 50 millennia of conflicts requires more than a few cycles." Kermox observes, manipulating 3 data crystals simultaneously with separate tentacles. Most species spend decades studying these records. "I don't have decades," Alina replies, studying the holographic battle formations floating above her workstation. "Earth needs results now." Her neural translator struggles with ancient battle accounts, yet patterns emerge that she can't ignore. Between rushed meals and stimulant beverages that taste like metallic dirt, she coordinates with Earth's top military historians, strategic experts, and game theorists via secure quantum link. The similarity is remarkable. Professor Abrams at West Point says during their 3rd conference. His weathered face on the comm screen looks as tired as Alina feels. These Vraxian campaigns from 12,000 years ago follow almost identical patterns to their modern engagements. "Not just Vraxian," Alina replies, sending another data packet. "Every major council species maintains consistent military doctrine across millennia. It's as if warfare stopped evolving." "Technological stagnation," suggests Admiral Hernandez from her office at the United Earth Defense Force. Alina shakes her head. "Their technology advances constantly, but their strategies, their fundamental approaches to conflict, those remain unchanged." The station's night cycle lighting casts blue shadows across her quarters as walls covered with comparative battle analyses reveal something revolutionary. Galactic warfare follows predictable, almost ritualistic patterns. While technologically impressive, the strategies remain static, overwhelming force applied according to traditional doctrines. Alina accesses a secure section containing records of conflicts involving newly admitted species. What she finds confirms her hypothesis. Younger civilizations initially employ diverse, unpredictable strategies, but within a few centuries of council membership, their military doctrines standardize, conforming to established galactic norms. "They're not evolving because they don't need to," she tells her Earth team during their next briefing. The major powers established military dominance so long ago that adaptation became unnecessary. They turned warfare into a formality. Massive fleets deployed in ceremonial demonstrations of strength, rather than genuine strategic contests. When Admiral Hernandez sends Earth's requested data package, Alina's hands tremble with excitement. The histories of Thermopylae, Agincourt, Yorktown, and 100 other battles, where innovation defeated superior strength, light up her displays. "This is it," she whispers, comparing Earth's chaotic, adaptive military history with the rigid patterns of galactic conflicts. What the Council sees as humanity's greatest weakness, our constant, messy reinvention of warfare, might actually be our greatest strength. Alina creates a secure uplink to Earth's primary quantum server, requesting full access to the combined military archives of every nation. Her request draws immediate attention from the highest levels of Earth government. "What exactly are you planning, Ambassador?" asks the UN Secretary General during an emergency conference call. Alina's exhausted face breaks into a smile for the first time in days. I'm going to show the council something they haven't seen in thousands of years, Madam Secretary. A genuinely new approach to conflict resolution. As she organizes her findings, Alina notices Kirmox watching her with what might be curiosity in the pulsing patterns of its brain. "You've found something unexpected in our records," the archivist observes. "Not in your records," Alina replies. "In what's missing from them. The council has forgotten how to adapt. Humanity never had that luxury." Alarms blare throughout Nexus Station, their harmonics calibrated to alert every species regardless of auditory range. Alina jerks awake at her desk in the archives. Data crystals scattered across the surface. "What's happening?" she asks as Kirmox glides rapidly into the chamber, its tentacles writhing with agitation. "Border dispute escalation," the archivist explains, manipulating the central holographic display. "Vraxian and Joxan territories, Sector 7 Gamma. An emergency council session has been called." The display shows two massive fleet formations converging near a pulsar system. Alina recognizes the distinctive wedge-shaped Vraxian battle groups and the spherical Joxan defensive clusters from her research. "What caused this?" she asks, gathering her notes. "The pulsar of Acheris," Kirmox replies, "recently discovered to contain exceptional concentrations of degenerate matter. Both empires claim prior exploration rights." Alina hurries to the council chambers, finding them already packed with representatives from across the station. The normally orderly seating arrangement has dissolved into chaotic groupings as species align themselves with their traditional allies. Smaller powers huddle together, their postures conveying fear evident even across species barriers. The central dais holds the imposing figures of High Commander Zorek and Joxan Prime Minister Talvex, their respective entourages maintaining careful distance from each other. The Vraxian Imperium claimed Acheris 300 cycles ago, Zorek announces, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into the common diplomatic language. "Our survey beacons mark the entire sector." "Beacons your forces placed after detecting our research vessels," counters Talvex, her crystalline form pulsing with indignation. "Joxan astronomers documented Acheris first, as our archives clearly show." The council leader, an ancient being of swirling gases contained within an ornic mechanical shell, rises to hover between them. Both claims will be evaluated according to council tradition. In the meantime, standard containment protocols apply. Alina watches in growing concern as the familiar ritual unfolds. She's seen this exact scenario dozens of times in the archives. The same diplomatic phrases, the same military posturing. The Vraxian commander proudly announces his intention to deploy the 7th battle sphere as a customary show of force, while the Joxan hegemony responds by activating their planetary shield networks, the same dance these powers have engaged in for thousands of years, typically resulting in decades of cold conflict and proxy wars. Representatives from worlds near the disputed sector begin to speak, their voices tinged with desperation. A delegation from Nibar II, a small agricultural world in the affected region, pleads for consideration. "Our trade routes pass through Sector 7 Gamma," their spokesperson explains. "A protracted military standoff would devastate our economy. Your concerns are noted." The council leader responds with the diplomatic equivalent of a dismissive wave. "As always, neutral worlds will be compensated according to established formulas for collateral economic impact." The Nidbari delegate slumps in defeat. Alina recognizes the pattern. Smaller species always bear the brunt of disputes between major powers, receiving minimal compensation after years of bureaucratic delay. When several lower-tier council members beg for alternative solutions, they're formally silenced with procedural objections. The inevitable cycle of escalation continues uninterrupted. In a moment of either bravery or madness, Alina activates her speaking priority, the blue light on her console flashing for attention. The chamber falls gradually silent as representatives notice the humans' unprecedented interruption. The chair recognizes Earth. The council leader announces with obvious reluctance. though we remind the junior ambassador that procedural protocols suggest restraint from non-affected parties. With respect, Alina begins, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. Earth wishes to suggest an alternative approach to this dispute, one based on our own historical experience with similar conflicts. A ripple of amusement passes through the chamber. The Vraxian commander's mandibles click in what Alina's translator identifies as derisive laughter. The human wishes to entertain us before real discussions. The council leader announces, "You have 10 minutes, Ambassador Chen. Perhaps your species' unique perspective will lighten this grave situation." Alina rises, painfully aware of the skeptical eyes upon her. This is either the end of her diplomatic career or the beginning of humanity's true place among the stars. "Thank you, Council Leader," she says, activating her data tablet. "I'll need access to the chamber's holographic systems." The chamber darkens as Alina takes control of the holographic systems, her access codes barely sufficient for what she's planned. She stands in the center of the council floor, a solitary human figure surrounded by representatives of civilizations that span the galaxy. "You've judged human warfare by our technology," she begins, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Today I'll show you our true power, how we think." With a gesture, she activates the first sequence. The chamber fills with a vivid recreation drawn from Earth's military archives, a vast Persian army confronting a small Greek force at a narrow coastal pass. Thermopylae, 480 BC, Alina explains. A force of less than 10,000 defenders held off an army of 100,000 through superior position and tactics. She transitions to another scene. Mounted warriors with composite bows circling larger forces, striking and retreating in fluid motions. Mongol horse archers of the 13th century revolutionized warfare through mobility and communication, conquering the largest land empire in Earth's history despite being outnumbered in nearly every engagement. For each historical example, Alina's team has meticulously translated human conflicts into galactic equivalents. A three-dimensional star map appears, showing how similar principles could apply to space warfare. Smaller, more maneuverable craft exploiting gravitational anomalies against larger fleet formations. While studying your archives, she continues, I noticed something remarkable. The Vraxian-Joxan conflict of 8,742 standard years ago followed almost identical patterns to your current dispute, as did the conflicts of 6,230 years ago, 4,105 years ago, and 2,561 years ago. The chamber remains silent as she methodically exposes the predictable patterns in Vraxian and Joxan military responses over 2,000 years of conflicts. Alina's diagrams overlay historical battle formations with current fleet deployments, revealing startling similarities. While your civilizations perfected existing strategies, humanity was forced to constantly reinvent ours. When we couldn't match our enemy's strength, we changed how strength itself was applied. The holographic display shifts to scenes from Earth's naval history. Admiral Nelson at Trafalgar broke conventional battle lines to target command ships, creating chaos in enemy formations. The scene transitions to submarine warfare. Later, we developed underwater vessels that could strike without warning, rendering superior surface fleets vulnerable. Alina overlays these tactics onto stellar maps, demonstrating how theoretical human-inspired approaches could bypass standard Vraxian defenses or disrupt Joxan command structures. We call it asymmetric warfare, the strategy of the underdog. She pauses, looking directly at the Vraxian commander. Humanity has always been the underdog. The council watches in stunned silence. Even species physiologically incapable of expressing shock somehow manage to look stunned. Alina continues, shifting the display to show Earth's diplomatic evolution. But our greatest innovations weren't in how we fought wars. They were in how we ended them. The display shows the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, the formation of the United Nations, the Geneva Conventions, and nuclear disarmament negotiations. After centuries of devastating conflicts, We learned something crucial. War is costlier than compromise. She highlights peace treaties between former enemies, showing how nations that once fought bitterly became allies within a generation. The Acarus Pulsar dispute doesn't require military posturing. Based on Earth's historical experience with resource conflicts, I've prepared an alternative approach. Elena displays a complex sharing arrangement based on models from Earth's Law of the Sea and Antarctic treaties. This framework allows both the Vraxian Imperium and Joxan hegemony to access Acarus resources based on development capacity rather than territorial claims, with neutral oversight ensuring compliance. The chamber remains deathly silent as she concludes. You laughed at our wars because they seemed small and primitive compared to yours. But we've had something you haven't had in millennia: the urgent need to evolve. When war threatens everything, you discover paths to peace you never imagined. The Vraxian commander's massive form shifts uncomfortably. The Joxan Prime Minister's crystalline structure pulses with colors Elena can't interpret. Murmurs spread through the chamber, not mockery now, but genuine consideration. The council leader hovers forward, his mechanical shell emitting the harmonic sequence indicating formal recognition. Your perspective is unexpected, Ambassador Chen. The council will recess to consider Earth's proposal. The council recess extends for nearly a full day cycle. Elena paces her quarters, simultaneously exhilarated and terrified by her bold gambit. The secure comm channel to Earth blinks with incoming messages. The UN Secretary-General, the Joint Chiefs, diplomacy experts, all wanting updates on the unprecedented situation. Ambassador, Terval announces through the intercom, your presence is requested in Negotiation Chamber 3. Instead of the Grand Council Hall, Elena finds herself in a smaller, more intimate setting. The Vraxian Commander Zorek and Joxan Prime Minister Talvex sit at opposite sides of a circular table, with the council leader's mechanical shell hovering at a third point. The remaining seats are occupied by representatives from worlds near the disputed sector, including the Nibari delegation. Ambassador Chen, the council leader acknowledges, we have reviewed your proposal. The principals have questions. Zorek's massive form leans forward, mandibles clicking softly. Your historical parallels are intriguing, but I question the applicability to our situation. Earth conflicts occurred on a single planet, with rudimentary technologies. The scale differs, Elena concedes, but the principles remain valid. Technology changes, psychology doesn't. The desire to protect resources, to save face while compromising. These transcend species and technology levels. Talvex's crystalline form shimmers with calculating light patterns. Your sharing framework resembles the settlement of Dorlath from 9,000 cycles ago. It failed spectacularly. I studied that case, Elena replies. Dorlath failed because it focused solely on resource distribution without addressing status concerns. My proposal includes public recognition of both Vraxian prior discovery and Joxan scientific contributions, allowing both sides to claim significant victories. The discussions continue for hours, delving into specifics of resource extraction rights, security protocols, and dispute resolution mechanisms. Elena draws continuously from Earth's rich history of treaty negotiation, from the Congress of Vienna to the complex sharing arrangements of Antarctica and the deep seabeds. What fascinates me, the Nidbari delegate interjects during a brief recess, is not just the proposal itself, but the context from which it emerged. Human history contains repeated cycles of conflict, yet each produces innovations in peacemaking. We rarely had the luxury of clean victories. Elena explains. Our geographical constraints meant enemies remained neighbors after conflicts ended. We had to learn to live alongside those we fought. As discussions resume, Elena doesn't just display battles, but also showcases humanity's evolution in conflict resolution, the law of nations, arbitration principles, confidence-building measures, and demilitarized zones. Humanity's greatest achievement isn't that we fight well, she explains as the holographic Earth rotates before them. its history of shifting borders and alliances playing out in accelerated time. Our achievement is learning to stop fighting. She presents detailed analysis of the current Vraxian-Joxan dispute alongside historical Earth conflicts with similar parameters, revealing uncomfortable truths about how the Council's traditional approaches drag conflicts out for centuries. Your standard protocols would leave Acarus in disputed status for an average of 83 years, based on historical precedent, Elena notes. During that time, neither side would fully access the resources, while nearby systems would suffer economic disruption costing approximately 12 trillion standard credits. The Vraxian commander taps a claw against the table, a gesture Elena now recognizes as thoughtful consideration. And your proposed timeline. Full implementation within 2 years. Both powers begin extraction within 6 months under joint oversight. Neutral worlds resume normal trade immediately. As the session concludes, the Council leader's shell emits harmonics indicating formal acknowledgement. The principles presented by Earth's representative merit further consideration. We will reconvene the full Council tomorrow to present a modified framework based on these discussions. Outside the chamber, Elena finds Savick waiting, his scales a deep blue of respect. You've accomplished something remarkable, Ambassador. No junior species has ever substantially altered a major power negotiation protocol. Elena smiles wearily. Perhaps that's the problem. The Council has been reusing the same playbooks for millennia. The Vraxian commander has requested a private meeting with you. Savick adds, his scales rippling with surprise. That's unprecedented. History is full of unprecedented events. Elena replies. That's rather the point. Theoretical exercises mean nothing, growls the Vraxian commander Zorak during the reconvened council session. His massive form dominates the central platform, mandibles clicking with barely contained frustration. If human strategies are superior, prove it. The chamber falls silent. Elena feels the weight of hundreds of alien gazes. What do you propose, Commander? She asks, keeping her voice steady. A series of military and diplomatic simulations using the Council's predictive systems, Zorak announces. The same technology we use to plan actual campaigns. Human-derived strategies against traditional approaches. Let the results speak for themselves. The Council leader's mechanical shell emits harmonic tones of agreement. An empirical demonstration would clarify matters. Ambassador Chen, do you accept this challenge? Elena hesitates only briefly. Earth accepts, provided the parameters are transparent and jointly agreed upon. The next 12 hours pass in intense preparation. Elena secures a private chamber with a quantum link to Earth, connecting with a hastily assembled team of Earth's finest military strategists, game theorists, and diplomatic historians. They're trying to embarrass you publicly, warns Admiral Hernandez from her command center. The simulation parameters will almost certainly favor their traditional approaches. I'm counting on it, Elena replies. We've always performed best when underestimated. The simulation chamber is a massive spherical room at Nexus Station's core, its walls composed entirely of mural responsive displays. Elena stands on a transparent platform, surrounded by holographic controls. Opposite her, Commander Zorak towers on a similar platform, his exoskeleton gleaming under ceremonial armor. The simulations will test 3 scenarios, announces the Council Arbiter, a neutron-dense being whose species evolved in a pulsar's magnetic field, border resource dispute, asymmetric confrontation, and multi-party diplomatic crisis. Each scenario allows 3 strategic approaches, with outcomes measured by resolution time, resource expenditure, and stability metrics. The simulation parameters are deliberately stacked against her, human-inspired strategies pitted against traditional Vraxian and Joxan approaches with 3-to-1 force advantages. The station's central viewing chamber becomes packed with observers as word spreads about the unprecedented challenge. The first simulation begins, a disputed asteroid field between rival powers, with complexities intentionally reminiscent of historical Earth conflicts over island chains. Alina applies principles from the Antarctic Treaty and South China Sea negotiations, creating a demilitarized harvesting zone with rotating administration. In the second scenario, asymmetric confrontation between a major power and insurgent elements, Alina draws upon Earth's painful lessons in counterinsurgency, focusing on addressing root grievances rather than military suppression. Her approach takes longer initially but produces exponentially more stable outcomes. The final simulation presents a multi-party diplomatic crisis involving refugee flows between hostile systems. Alina applies frameworks from Earth's refugee conventions combined with Marshall Plan-inspired economic integration, transforming the humanitarian crisis into a mutual development opportunity. With each simulation, observers from dozens of species crowd closer, their attention fully captured by the unexpected results. Zorak's mandibles click with increasing agitation as the metrics consistently favor the human approaches, not in immediate tactical advantage, but in long-term strategic outcomes. By the final simulation, even Alina's Earth team is stunned by their success rate. 83% improved outcomes against numerically superior forces, with 62% reduction in projected casualties and economic disruption compared to traditional galactic engagements. The chamber falls silent as the final metrics display across the neural walls. The Vraxian commander stands motionless, his massive frame silhouetted against the glowing results. The evidence appears conclusive. The Council Arbiter announces, neutron field pulsing with what Alina's translator interprets as surprise. Human-derived strategic frameworks produce superior outcomes in all tested scenarios when measuring comprehensive metrics. These are merely simulations, Zorak protests, though his translator conveys decreasing conviction. Reality contains variables no model can predict. A fair observation, Alina concedes. But isn't that precisely the point? Human strategies excel at adapting to unpredictable variables. That's what makes them effective. The Council leader's mechanical shell hovers forward. The demonstration has merit. We will reconvene tomorrow to reconsider the Acaris dispute with these new approaches in mind. As the chamber empties, Alina remains on her platform, exhausted but triumphant. The evidence is undeniable, visible to all in the simulation's cold, hard metrics. Humanity's place among the stars has forever changed. The council chambers have never been so crowded. Representatives from every species strain to witness the historic session, with diplomatic aides and cultural attaches packed into observation galleries. Alina stands at the center of it all, the simple blue uniform of Earth a stark contrast to the elaborate regalia surrounding her. The Council recognizes the adoption of Resolution 7294B, the Acaris Resource Sharing Framework, announces the Council leader, his mechanical shell gleaming under the ceremonial lights. Based on principles presented by Earth's delegation and refined through collaborative effort, this marks the first major interstellar dispute in 3 centuries to be resolved without traditional force deployments. The massive document hovering in holographic display contains Alina's core proposal: joint development rights, neutral oversight, and protected transit corridors, enhanced with technical specifications from Vraxian and Joxan experts. The Nibari delegation and other affected worlds have prominent roles in the implementation committees, their economic interests specifically protected. Furthermore, continues the Council leader, the Wisdom Council proposes the establishment of a permanent Strategic Innovation Committee to explore alternative approaches to interstellar disputes. Ambassador Chen of Earth is nominated as its founding chairperson, with representatives from 12 member species to be selected from both established and emerging civilizations. A murmur passes through the chamber. Such recognition for a junior species is unprecedented, a fact not lost on Alina or the other newcomer representatives, who now regard her with newfound respect. As the session concludes, Alina finds herself surrounded by diplomats seeking private consultations. Species that had previously ignored her existence now press data crystals into her hands with invitations to discuss their own territorial disputes and trade conflicts. You've accomplished something remarkable. Notes Turville, managing Alina's suddenly overwhelming schedule. The Galactic Historical Archives have requested permission to create a special collection documenting Earth's conflict resolution methodologies. Make sure they include our failures alongside our successes, Alina replies. The lessons we learned from our mistakes were often the most valuable. Later that evening, a notification chimes in her quarters. The Vraxian commander requests entrance, announces the station's eye. Alina straightens her uniform. Granted. The doors part to admit Zorek's massive form, forcing him to duck beneath the human-sized doorway. Without his ceremonial armor, the commander's exoskeleton reveals intricate patterns that Alina recognizes from her research as markings of distinguished service. Ambassador Chen, he begins, his translator rendering his complex clicking into smooth diplomatic language. I come to offer personal acknowledgement. Alina gestures to a reinforced seating area designed for larger species. I'm honored, Commander. Zorek settles his massive frame, mandibles moving thoughtfully. For 10,000 years, my kind has won through strength, he admits, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his native speech. We stopped learning because we didn't need to learn. Your kind never had that luxury. Necessity drove our innovation, Alina agrees. When you can't overpower your opponent, you must outthink them. The simulations revealed something disturbing, Zorek continues. Our strategies have become ritualized, predictable. Against a truly adaptive opponent, we would be vulnerable despite our technological advantage. Perhaps that's why the universe arranged for us to meet as allies rather than enemies, Alina suggests. The Vraxian commander's compound eyes study her with new respect. Indeed, the Vraxian Military Academy would consider it an honor to host Earth military historians. An exchange of knowledge would benefit both our peoples. As Alina's diplomatic status is elevated to full council membership, decades ahead of schedule, she reflects on the irony that humanity's greatest gift to the stars comes from our most painful lessons. Species that once mocked now send their brightest minds to Earth's newly established diplomatic academy. In the reconstructed Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, representatives from ancient stellar empires learn from human history professors about the complex art of building peace from the ashes of war. What the Council first dismissed as primitive weakness, they now recognize as evolutionary gold, forged in the fire of humanity's long climb from caves to the stars. We come in peace, Alina addresses the graduating class of the First Interstellar Diplomatic Corps, a rainbow of species from across the galaxy. Not because we've never known war, but because we've known it too well. That is humanity's wisdom to share with the stars.